Welcome to the Workplace Podcast. We've got an incredible guest today, and I'm really excited for the insights and ideas they'll be sharing. There are so many practical learnings from the conversation that will make a difference to you, your team, or organization. If your organization is interested in a workshop on this topic of the podcast, feel free to get in touch via our website, yellowwood.ie. If you want to support our podcast, and you'll find a link to our Patreon in the podcast description. Thanks in advance for listening and your support. Now, let's take a different path to success. Welcome to the Workplace Podcast. Returning today, as promised, to discuss neutralizing toxic experiences at work is Carol Kauffman. Dr. Carol Kauffman is known internationally as a leader in the field of coaching. Marshall Goldsmith named her the #1 leadership coach. Thinkers 50 ranked her among the top 8 coaches in the world. And Kauffman has over 40,000 hours of client contact and works with global CEOs and their teams. She's an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School, a visiting professor at Henley Business School, University of Reading, UK, and serves as a senior leadership advisor at Egon Zehnder. Dr. Carol Kauffman, welcome back to the Workplace Podcast.
Thank you for having me back. You have to show everybody the book. You get the most, whatever those are called, awards.
Yeah, so that the Post-its and stickies and all that book, I have repeated over and over again, is one of the best leadership books I have ever read. If people want to know more about that book specifically, we have a podcast on this real-time leadership, and it has so many frameworks that I might return to, if that's okay with you, Carol, later on. Sure. Our topic is about neutralizing workplace experiences, our toxic workplace experiences, and you left us on a cliffhanger. Would you return or would you not? Yeah, you have returned, but some people at work might be always on the edge, that cliff's edge, when it comes about workplace experiences, especially those toxic ones. So for people listening in, Carol, what is a toxic experience? What might that look like? Because people mightn't be so used to it. It's kind of going, oh, I'm experiencing this.
Well, first of all, I think there's a range of what we would call a toxic leadership. On one hand, there's a place where there's reduced psychological safety, that you don't feel comfortable speaking up, that your sense of, like, if you were a light bulb, your wattage would go down when you go to work rather than up. And so I think there's a wide range there. Then and I think there's many places like that. I think there's a minority of places that are truly toxic, with leaders who really do not care about their impact or how bad it is if you get the numbers, and they can shut people down, they can humiliate people. I have one situation now that it's extreme toxic, where the person literally is having obstacles thrown in their way when they try to do something. Oh, your team can't talk to you about this. Your team can't do that. So there's that extreme. But I think there's sort of toxic sort of bubbles in a lot of workplaces, where there's certain areas where it's toxic, or certain areas, again, when I think of toxic, it can be poisonous, or it can just be reducing your wattage of your being able to really thrive at work.
And sometimes we have that in leaders or peers, it could be within a team, there's many different ways there. So if we were to look at this, we'll say through the lens of it's my manager, for example, and the manager is listening in here. How might I recognize myself as a manager that I might, from time to time, not be the best form of myself, or the best version of myself when I'm showing up to that leadership piece? Because you talk about so many different aspects of leadership in your book. And the reason I say that is, as leaders, when the pressure is on, that's when really good leadership begins to shine. Or this is when, a bit like you were saying there, that analogy of the light bulb, we start to dim other people's light bulbs, and then our insecurities or our anxieties come out to play here, where my ego is going to be damaged, or something along those lines, and the pressure is on and I have to achieve a certain result. So from a leadership point of view, what do I need to recognize in myself?
It's interesting. Do you want to think about it as the leader who's having the negative impact, or you're receiving the negative impact? So if it's you're receiving it, I think one of the first things to think about is this leader silencing you or shutting you down? And of that, how much is that due to the leader? How much of that is due to yourself? Now, I think most of these leaders that are poor leaders, they're not bad people. I think that's what what bad leadership literature talks about. People who are narcissistic or Machiavellian or sociopathic, those do exist. But I think that's the far minority. Most of the time, this leadership is a side effect of the pressures they are under, and what the board is doing to them, or what their boss is doing to them, or what their life is doing to them. But the thing then is, when you're feeling silenced, what can you do about it? I think that's really the question.
So what can you do about it if you're feeling silence? We'll say, for example, if somebody doesn't want to listen to your concerns, or it's a results focused business. It might be, whatever it is, sales or financial targets or whatever, and people are feeling the pressure, then I don't want to hear about just get the job done. Like, what, how do you handle that?
Well, I think the biggest thing to manage is when you feel that is kind of your fault. Like your leader is making you feel de-skilled, and for you to think, oh, what's wrong with me? As opposed to what's wrong here? What's going on? Maybe the manager is feeling unsafe, his or herself. That person's feeling safe. And so that behavior and pressure is trickling down. So what do you do? I think there's a few things that you can do. One of them is noticing what's going on in yourself physically. So you know me and acronyms, right? So I'm coming up with an acronym for this one called PEAK, PEAK, for peak performance, this kind of pressure. So that would be P, would be what's going on with you physiologically. Can you manage your physiology? So the stress is on you, maybe you're not being listened to. How can you slow your body down, neutralize the kind of toxins that get surfaced when you're feeling threat? So that's one thing, is what can you do physiologically? Then E is environmentally, in terms of just the impersonal or the personal environment. What can you just be aware of is, do you have resources there? But also, is the culture what is contributing to this, not just you? But the other thing is, okay, so manage your physiology, manage and notice your culture, but also your closer relationships. When you look at the environment, for the relationships, like, can other people help you be a buffer, and can buffer the impact? Can you sort of have people that you don't complain to and sort of raise the ante, but to get support from? Because being isolated is really kind of the worst part. So physiology, environment, and then A is for sort of affect, emotion. What can you do to regulate your affect in a situation like this? How can you keep your reaction the right size? And then that also goes along with sort of K is knowledge and wisdom. And that is, okay, how am I talking to myself that might make this worse than it is? Can I be doing so, like, I'm not catastrophizing? How can I be talking myself through this? And then also how to pull on my deepest wisdom and values. So I'm getting this thing. So how do I imagine myself manage my physiology, my environment, my affect and my emotional responses, and my cognitive ones? So all of these are ways that you can be managing yourself. Now, these all fall under the rubric of your internal. There's also interpersonal, but I think we should stay with the internal first.
So from a physical or physiological point of view, this is where you can get control of your breathing. This is where, if you need to take a sip of water, that type of aspects, maybe go for a walk, Is that what you're saying?
A number of them is one, the other thing is like sleep is your secret weapon. So if you really want to
Yeah.
stay optimally physiologically resilient, be managing your sleep, hydration,
Yeah.
and also learning mindfulness, and in
Mm.
particular, practicing physiological slowdown. So basically, what
Yeah.
you do is before you get into a tough situation, whenever you feel yourself activated, see if you can downshift it by just breathing more slowly, talking to yourself, just managing like an athlete has to.
Mm.
Like, there's a great thing about Roger Federer, because how did he keep beating opponents who were like younger and probably fitter than him? What you would notice if you watch them is between shots, he would have his racket out and he would be playing with the strings of his racket. What was he doing? He was doing physiological decompression exercises to lower his heart rate. And so between each shot, he would lower his heart rate. And that's something that we may not be able to do at that world level. But for ourselves, it's like, okay, how do you lower your blood pressure? How do you then coach yourself? Okay, this is tough. I don't like it, but I can handle it. Okay, let me just settle myself.
I love those empowering messages there, and it's really built on that resilience piece. And then you talked about the environment and ecology there, and specifically the culture is what stood out for me. So I could be in an organization where come end of quarter or end of month, there are aspects where the pressure is on, and culturally then this needs to be done. There's timelines, or it could be, a report is due or tender is due. What is it about the culture then that I can maybe take control of, or I can influence, or what might that be?
There's big C culture and there's little c culture. Culture is, if you're sort of in a performance only, just the numbers, and here we have to remember the kind of pressures the CEOs are under to their board, under the kinds of the shareholders are on them. So, you have to realize that the culture is the result of many forces. But whatever the big culture is, you can work on creating your own little culture. This goes back from the ecosystem. I may actually change environment to ecosystem, by the way. I really like that. I just worked on this new acronym a couple of weeks ago. So you may be responsible for the change.
This is the second time this has happened, Carol. I'm delighted. Yes. I'm delighted. You should come on the podcast more often. Anyways.
What about your own group, like your own team? What can you do to help your own team feel safer? What can you help to do to make the people who report to you feel safer? I was working in an extraordinarily toxic organization a few years ago. The irony being the CEO was a big proponent of psychological safety. That was wonderful irony. And I worked with a number of the leaders that were right between the very toxic CEO and the next group. And that next group, many of them, they didn't want to get promoted because it was not that. But, what they did is some of them were really able to connect with one another. So in terms of the system, their peers. But what I noticed when I was also coaching further down into the organization, because this was interesting because I was coaching at multiple levels, some of the leaders were fantastic at buffering their people. They were like umbrellas. If there was acid rain, they were umbrellas and they protected their people. And then they were able to create smaller ecosystems that were safer. So even though you can't impact the big culture often, you can impact the small culture, the people right around you.
There's something you said then about the affect, and that's a bit like going back into Roger Federer there, is how do you have that emotional regulation again, isn't it? Is there something to that as well where we can tap more into of how the effector, and it's about that connectedness as well to yourself and to others, isn't it? So you're not isolated as well. Is there any other strategies that we could, I suppose, allow our listeners to learn more about?
And it's another acronym. I have a terrible memory, so I have an acronym. I can remember it when I'm teaching, but I can also remember it when I need it. So the emotional one, the acronym is PURE, P-U-R-E. I'll say it and then go through it, which is perceive an emotion, understand the emotion, regulate the emotion, and express the emotion. So perceive, it's like, first, how can you like name it? Like a lot of times if you just feel something like, well, what are you feeling? Can you articulate it? And the research is that you can name what you're feeling, you have more capacity to manage it. So if you just feel like in this agitated swirl, slow down. Ask yourself, what am I feeling? Am I feeling, am I feeling dejected? Am I feeling de-skilled? Am I feeling like shame? What am I feeling? So one thing I love, I learned this from a client years ago. She was suddenly feeling de-skilled by someone, and she just suddenly felt this real sense of shame. And she looked up at me and she said, I'm having a shame attack. I thought that was just brilliant because it named it. So it's not now I'm feeling shame, I'm feeling de-skilled or whatever. It's like, oh, I'm having a shame attack. I'm having an attack of feeling de-skilled rather than I'm worthy of the shame or I actually am de-skilled. It's like in this situation, this is how I am feeling. How can I perceive it and name it? Then how can I understand it? Like, okay, what impact is this having on me? And how can I help myself understand what's going on? That might be something like understand it in the context of my life. Like, oh, this person is really sending out vibes that I'm stupid. Okay. Now, if I happen to have a life where that wasn't the message I got, that's going to impact me on a scale of 1 to 10. That might get me up to a 4. If I had parents or somebody who really, and then, okay, now that same thing's going to make me an 8. So it's like, understand, like, where's this coming from? How much is this right now? And how much is it activating things from my past? And then how can I just stay in this moment? Then when you go to regulate it, it's sort of a little bit back to the physiology of regulating the emotion by downshifting, but also by, I think of it as keeping my emotions the right size. There's been a number of times where people would say like, oh, this happened to me and my boss said this, and this is what happened and that's what happened. And I'll say, okay, question. If you think that your reputation in this company, let's say that's 100, a great reputation is 100%. What portion of that reputation is related to this encounter? And they're like, oh, well, 5%. And I'm like, okay, well, then you should be 5% upset about it instead of 100% upset about it. Now, that's a ridiculous thing to say because who can do that? But it's sort of like, oh, right, let me put this and understand this in terms of its context. How important is this? Because we can get swept away by that emotion in the moment and make it the wrong size. E.g., my reaction is bigger size than the situation merits. Sometimes the other way around, though. I've had people go like, oh, but the market will correct itself or this or that or the other. And I'm like, no, you better wake up and smell the coffee. You are in trouble. Not that that's what I say, but I will say, so how significant is this? If you think of your business and things don't just pop back, how important is this? So, and then sometimes it's like, you've gotten this feedback on your 360. How expensive is it going to be for you to not listen to it? So how do I make my emotional reaction the right size?
And there's something about the last piece then of that knowledge and wisdom is, do I see old patterns emerging here where I may not be assertive enough or have boundaries in place, or maybe I should have the wisdom to express myself in that way and give that feedback, or how to frame it in a way that is not overtly emotional. It's expressing factually what has happened, and I think it's the impact of that behavior, isn't it? That of where those toxic experiences might have. Could you add to that in some way?
Okay, there's a couple of things. Back to the expressing before we go to the knowledge and wisdom. Very often just naming it can be helpful to say, like you're thinking that the person is unhappy with you. You could just say something like, I would love some feedback from you. How are you feeling that project is going? Just ask a question. There's a woman, I think her name is Molly Chang, but she not exactly a podcast. She sees regular things called Say It Skillfully. They're just brilliant. So I would suggest if someone needs to come sort of like interpersonal, how do I express this? I think Molly's the best at that.
And that's where it's the language of reframing is really important, where you're saying it with skill. So, for example, if you're feeling ignored, you say, it's really important for me to be acknowledged or recognized there. So that leads us then to the conversation then about boundaries then, which is really important, is to recognize, hold on here, this is unacceptable behavior if people have shouted at me, or because it's a matter of having respect for yourself, isn't it? When it comes to neutralizing toxic experiences at work, is people need to, that there is that element of that. I had a wonderful podcast guest on, Amy Gallo. Amy's great. Amy's great. And you talked about psychological safety with Amy Edmondson on as well, talking about psychological safety. And a good, two wonderful podcasts for our listeners there. So
this is Amy Gallo's book called Getting Along with, I can't tell if this is in the frame or not, Getting Along with Everybody.
It is, yeah.
It's that's the equivalent of my example of you and all your Post-its. It's a very, very good book.
A brilliant book, I have to say. And if people want to listen to that podcast, we have that there.
Okay, so the whole idea of the expressing the emotion, right? That perceive it, understand it, regulate, and express it. We have this sort of belief that if I am feeling a certain thing, say about you, that I'm supposed to say it. And if that's the direction, then Molly can help incredibly on how to say it skillfully. But I also think you have to be strategic. Sometimes speaking up is the wrong thing to do. You don't want to speak up because you can't regulate it, so you have to say it, right?
Yeah.
Also, sometimes it is in fact dangerous, and you need to be wise in how much you express of what you are feeling, and like start out with a piece of it. And then if that lands well, then you could add a sentence with the next piece. But if that gets you backlash, it's like, okay, it is not really safe to really speak to this person now, or at least right now. It could be another day, they'd be okay when they're not in the middle. But I do think it's important to not feel this pressure that for me to be kind of have high integrity and whatever, that I should just say what is going on. Be very careful. It depends where in the continuum of toxic you are. Some places it is in fact not your imagination. It is not safe. And so that's where, back to the ecosystem, that's where really getting support from other people, getting a sense of like, is he doing this to other people, or is she doing this to other people? Yeah. Am I being singled out here? Does he or she do this to everybody? So just kind of getting the ecosystem, and then that helping you make a strategic decision on what to share interpersonally or not.
As you said that, I was just coming back to a section of your book that you wrote with David Noble, the lean in, lean out, lean in, don't lean. And that was just very much evident for me when you were saying that, because it's that empowering approach to say, listen, you have choices. And then we'll see if you have it. So we might go through that, but also I'd like you to maybe think about then is, well, if that person is doing that to everybody then, and to neutralize that, do we talk to each other, or do we notice a pattern and then we bring it somewhere else, or do we kind of go and listen, this can't continue? So let's speak about that through the lenses of the leans maybe.
Okay, so first we'll go back to the leans, and then the are you alone or not. So yeah, you almost got it right. It's like the 4 stances, which are when there's something. So I sometimes use the example of somebody sneering at you when you're talking. So, okay, so I've just been talking to my team. Maybe you're my boss, maybe you're a colleague, maybe you're someone who works for me. And as I'm talking, like, you're making the face, you get I'm getting the eye roll from you. Okay, so that's potentially toxic, at least a bit toxic. What are my choices? Okay, so the four stances are: I lean in with action, I lean back with data, I lean with for connection, or I don't lean at all. And so this would be sort of interpersonally. Okay, do I take you on? I might go like, hey, William, what's going on? I saw that you really looked like you did not like what I just said. So I'm leaning in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this okay? Or I could lean back and maybe I'd say something, maybe I wouldn't, but I would just sort of, this is a piece of data for me. Now, how do I let this not have too much of an impact, but not too little? I might say, so, William, I'm wondering if there's some data or some more information here that would be useful for you to know. Okay, now if I was someone who would lean in, first of all, it might make me panic, like, oh no, William is upset with me. And then the rest of the meeting, all I'm doing is looking at you directly or pinging like, okay, how's William doing? How's William doing? William, okay, is he upset with me? Is he mad at me? And I let it distract me. Now, I could also just think, oh, William must be having some trouble right now, and he's feeling badly, and it's coming out this way. Okay. Or don't lean, which is I have the capacity to choose to respond to you or not. And maybe I can just have a reflection moment first where it's like, okay, do I need to respond to this? No, I don't think I do. Or do I need to respond to this? Yeah, I need to lean in. But it's sort of letting knowledge come to you rather than like just pausing for that intuition to catch up with you. So those are the four stances. And, you know, we need to be fluid and know which one works with which person at what time.
Yeah. So then if this experience is being felt by everybody in my team, by that one person, where might we go with that conversation? That's something that we collectively address, or is that something that's no HR issue, or, you know, I'm just curious because that might be the manager, you know, the CEO you were talking about earlier on, who had that blind spot of psychological safety. They thought they were great at that. Like, how do you give feedback to someone who thinks they're doing what they're intended to do and they're doing the exact opposite?
Well, in that case, I gave a lot of coaching to the people in the C-level team of how to manage it. But it was complicated. That takes us back to the ecosystem and the culture again. When other people have spoken up, has there been backlash? In which case you'd be much more savvy about it. Or what kind of good resource is HR? I mean, this is really where a good HR system could really help you. And people could say, listen, I think this person needs a 360 or whatever, but doing what the ecosystem will allow you to do, and then to feel how called do you feel to take this person on and this behavior on? Because you could, and again, if you do, then how to do a conversation in a sequence to say, you know, listen, I think some of us are feeling like we're not serving you well, you know, how am I doing? Can you give me some feedback? You know what? So sort of like by asking questions first and then seeing one, how far can they go? How open are they? How helpful is HR? And then how can we support one another? Supporting one another is tricky though, because you want to support one another in a constructive way rather than a hang this person out to dry. Can you believe what an idiot they are? Screw, she did it again. Oh my God, what a great. And then you activate in a way that's not constructive. It's very tempting to do that because sometimes those people are, you know, it's personally, I find the hardest thing to not go to town on is hypocrisy. So the one about, I'm leading with psychological safety, but I'm screaming at you if you're 2 minutes late, that kind of hypocrisy really makes everyone want to just like dump on the person. But I was reading an article once. It was a woman who was the head of the Episcopal Church or something. And someone was talking to her about that because there had been some big hypocrisy type scandal. And she neutralized it by saying, you know, we are all hypocrites. On some level, we are all hypocrites. So don't throw the first stone.
Yeah.
That's different though than from saying, hey, listen, yeah, she hurt you. Yeah, me too. Listen, it's not you. It's a way that you really can support each other rather than go to town. Because the destructive way doesn't help you.
And that reminds me of Cartman's drama triangle, where you go into, there's the persecutor and there's the victim and then the rescuer or the savior, isn't it? Where really it's the winner's pyramid that we're trying to go into, is to say, listen, where's the coach? What is it that you need to know right now? That goes into your lean questions as well, doesn't it? And it's that challenger approach, isn't it?
And there's a real difference between the persecutor and the constructive sort of proclaimer, and the victim to the survivor, and the passive bystander to an observer and namer. So how do we take the triangle and make each one a more positive?
So what reminds me then as well here is, it is very much, when we're going into a situation there, is it's very easy to do the rash or impulsive thing, isn't it? And this is where you're using your peak framework as well. It's to understand the complex interactions that we have there, isn't it? And quoting from your book, why sometimes leadership is difficult. But sometimes I need to have that personal leadership as well, isn't it? And that's why I think your book is a read for everybody, not just leaders. I think for yourself to be fully engaged at work and to be fulfilled, like, your book is such a good read because it shows you how to handle different interactions, but also it gives you a bit more understanding to why people might behave that the way they behave. And this is why there's an emotional weight, or these are the high stakes that might be at play for other people. It just gives you a better understanding of leadership and I suppose the pressures there.
Oh, two things. One is, for those of you who are here who have children, at the very end of writing the book, I might have said this to you last time, very end of writing the book, when I could no longer get my paws on it, I realized I had written a parenting book.
Wow.
Go back, look at it. It is a fabulous parenting book. There's your kid. They haven't done their homework. What are you going to do? Are you going to lean in? Are you going to lean back? Are you going to lean with? Not lean for the homework, or for any of this self-management, because the kids can activate you more than anyone. So that's just, when you say the book isn't just for leaders, you reminded me of my thinking that.
Isn't that a wonderful thing to discover about your book? What I've discovered, that my own two boys have started coaching me back, which is great, but it's a great reflection on yourself as well, isn't it? Where they're holding up the mirror to you, and they're going to go, hold on here now, So I'm being held to account. I think it's really important. So let's go back to neutralizing workplace experiences then. So we talked about culture, we talked about ourselves and the team, we talked about how to handle that. Okay, what happens if I have a lovely leader and it's only at these every 2 months that I'm like, there's a deadline coming up. Oh, how do I handle that? Where I think the pressure might be on now. So they're generally very nice, and then their behavior is obscene for 3 or 4 days, a quarter. And you're walking on eggshells as well, isn't it? Because that's a toxic environment where you're kind of going, I don't know when this person's going to explode.
Right. It depends also the way they explode. Because if as the leader, can you name it to say, listen, I'm not at my best right now. We have got to make this. We've got to get in together. So listen, if I'm yelling at you, sorry. Name it. It also depends what kind of toxic they become. If they become toxic, like they're rushed, they're stressed, they're hyper, they're activated. That's annoying, but it's not actually super toxic. What's toxic, you hint at with the walking on eggshells, is the leader who under stress turns on you. I can't believe what a bad job you did. You're really letting me down. Okay, that's like personal attack on you. for not coming through when I need you, which is very different from like, William, I'm out of my mind. We've got to get this done. We've got to get this out the door. Like now, like state, right?
Yeah.
One is just, I'm mad and it's coming out on you. The other is, I'm mad, I'm stressed, and I'm coming down on you. You are inadequate. This is your fault. So it depends. I think in order to get people on eggshells, I think it needs to be more of this destructive feedback. And that's hard because in some ways, if you get like that unpredictably, it actually sometimes have a more negative impact than if you're that way all the time.
Yeah.
If you're that way all the time, I know what to expect from you. But if you're only like, it's like, once in a month or whatever, what William am I going to get? And that's everyone's like, what mood is he in today? Did you see his face? What mood's in you? That kind of thing. So if you're an observer of that yourself, that's time also to go to HR to say, this person is having a contemptuous attitude towards some of my peers, and they need some help. And also when someone is that like contemptuous, whatever, it is often not the time to completely counter them unless you feel you can. I was once the recipient of that myself, and I did feel it. I said, I can take your anger, but take your contempt out of this room. Like, that is not okay for you to feel that about me. I screamed, fine, that is not okay. Now, that was a more equal relationship, and I felt safe doing that. I was mad, but I wasn't going to counter contempt with contempt, whatever. But if that person, that contemptuous behavior was in the context of an unsafe person, then, I really need to think twice about, do I say something? Do I lean back? The don't lean is when in doubt, stall, because we have to really trust our reactions here, because you can feel pressured. You have to say something. You could feel pressure. I could never say something, but you have to sort of be smart and strategic as you're making the decision of when you want to take on your boss or sometimes a peer. But the whole other thing here is, I do believe that many of us are the recipients of this effect, but we are equally have that effect on others. So I think, for all of us, as we're thinking about the effect of the manager on us, we need to think about, well, what about our impact on others? Because one thing I would say is, if you haven't had this silencing effect on people that work for you, you simply have not been tested. Either you've got like really simple leadership challenges, or you haven't really tested, because we all have that in us. Like the woman who said we're all hypocrites, like we are all silencers ourselves. So we just need to be aware of it. And what I talked about of what to do when you're the recipient of it is exactly the same thing to do if you're giving it out, giving that energy out to others. Manage your physiology, downshift your energy, be taking care of yourself. The environment, or now the ecosystem. What about the ecosystem? It's pressuring on me, that is causing me to act out sideways. I need to be careful of what relationships can I pull on? And then affect, how can I be managing my emotions in a better way? And for knowledge and wisdom, how can I really track how I'm talking to myself? And then how can I pull on my values and my purpose to help? And a lot of times, just by naming it, listen, sorry, I just like, really, William, I can't believe you didn't do that. And I can go, oh, wait, sorry. Sorry. I had one client once who was terribly destructive. The most destructive leader I've ever encountered. Well, second most. And he on his 360, it said that he loses control, gets in people's faces, screams at them, and destroys them. He then proceeded during our mandatory coaching session to talk about everything else other than that. And finally, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've got to do something. He's like avoiding it like crazy. And I just said, well, that's interesting. As he was talking about being dethroned in his, youth or something. I thought it was interesting. How does it connect to what it says here? That you lose control and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I don't lose control. He goes, no, that's not true. I'm expecting to say I don't yell or scream, whatever. He goes, I don't. I pick who I'm going to destroy, and I choreograph the witnesses to their destruction. I'm very Machiavellian. Well, that was the beginning of quite a coaching conversation. At some point, we had to address the issue of being evil, and was that okay with him? And the fact that everyone was terrified of him, first for him to realize, etc. So you could think like someone with him was a lost cause, and it was very interesting because this is part of a years-long leadership development. And when I actually really challenged it on, are you comfortable being evil? He told everybody. So it was like urban legend as he took his own personality on. He also did amazing, amazing things, saved many lives. So he was really complicated. So years later, I'm now talking with his boss, a new boss, many iterations later, and I could, because everybody knew I was his coach because he referred all these people to me. No one had ever taken on before. And so I said, well, so-and-so, I wrote a paper about him once. I didn't publish it, called, the first line was, should I call him Brian the Lion or Jake the Snake as his fake name? So later I said, so how did so-and-so, whatever happened to so-and-so? And he goes, oh yeah, so-and-so, he's still an asshole. He goes, but now when he attacks someone, he stops mid-sentence and apologizes.
Wow. Okay.
That's as much.
Some progress.
We got. But a lot of these people, even the ones that look really, really bad, there's often good inside. And now for those of us who are coaches, how do you reach in and pull out their goodness? And as you do that, use that to help confront when they are destructive to people. And very often they're kind of shocked. I mean, this guy wasn't shocked because it was his plan, but almost everybody else is shocked.
Yeah, because like I've worked with people where there's very much that ego, and I must do this, is their belief system that's so entrenched. And then it's like those people are subservient to me to get the job done. And they're not really treating people with respect or really valuing their contribution. It's like, I'm bringing in all the cash or whatever it is. There's something there with the ego that's so directly aligned to their self-importance. It's a touch of narcissism there, but I think we're complicated as human beings. So, and I didn't want to view that person as toxic. I wanted to view them in that humane way, they grow up in an environment or something. Their view and leadership was that way. But for yourself, then, if you're working with someone like that, and I'm just curious from your perspective, is it about, giving them a 360 and challenging them that, or here's the feedback you're getting from your team, and really saying, okay, I'm holding up a mirror here. This is what we're seeing. Because it's like you talk about that CEO with the psychological safety and the hypocrisy, to the outer world, it's like that street angel, house devil approach, that can happen.
Yeah. And again, I think it's whether or not the person is doing it under stress or they're really doing it to throw you under the bus. How to get a sense of that. Because on one hand, we have the thing as well, if you've been mistreated, you're going to mistreat others. The whole thing about people who have been, people who are abusers, what they've been abused. Well, vast majority of people who are abused do not abuse others. So we do it this way. You've been abused, you've been abused, as opposed to you've been abused, and only a small number are abusers themselves. Other people really pull to get themselves out of that target. And what you do with that, I think, depends on your level of safety. As a coach, yes, it's your job to say things. And in my case, when I was going to take this particular leader on, I remember thinking, when he said this whole thing about I'm very Machiavellian, I remember thinking, I know what I want to do and say here. And if I do, I'm probably going to get fired. And then my mentor, this wonderful man, David Peterson, who died the past couple of years, said to me, if you know what you want to say and you're reasonably sure it's going to get you fired, if you don't say it, you're not doing your job. Now, getting fired as a coach, when this is just one of my clients, versus getting fired because it's my boss and I don't have anywhere to go, the stakes are very different. So I'm saying that we need to have courage to speak up, but we also need to be careful as well, depending on how toxic it is. But many, many leaders, they're shocked when they hear the impact they have on others. That's not what they want to be doing at all. And a great book on this is one by Liz Wiseman. And she wrote a book called Multipliers. And in it, she talks about multipliers and diminishers and talks about accidental diminishers. And so that's another place you can go. So Molly for the say it skillfully, Amy Gallo for her book Getting Along, and Liz Wiseman with her book Multipliers and the concept of accidental diminishers.
And let's remember real-time leadership, where you ask these.
Oh yeah, I have it somewhere in the background, I think.
Yeah, I have it. I have it here in front of me here. Oh, and there's three things I want to leave you.
Yeah, there it is.
There's three things. There's three inseparable dimensions for critical effective leadership. What do I need to do? Who do I need to be? And how do I need to relate? This is all in the book. Carol Kauffman, thank you so much for joining the Workplace Podcast today.
Thank you yet again. And thank you for the brainstorms I'm getting from talking to you.
And if people were to find out more about you, Carol, and what you do and your book, how might they do so?
Sure. Easiest just to Google me. You see my name down there? Carol Kauffman, 2 F's, 1 N. So there's carolkaufman.com. There's to reach to me directly, my initial CK at carolkaufman.com. And we have a HBR article on part of the book, which we can send to people. So that's how to find me.
Well, Carol Kauffman, thank you so much for joining the Workplace Podcast.
Thank you. It's been fun as always. And yes, I will come back again sometime.
Oh, love that. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to the Workplace Podcast. I really appreciate you being part of the conversation. If you found value in today's episode and want to support what we're building here, you'll find a link to our Patreon in the description. As a workplace expert, I'm here to help you resolve your workplace dilemmas. If your organization could benefit from my expertise, feel free to get in touch via our website, yellowwood.ie. Yellowwood, your external learning and development partner. Take a different path to success in your career, leadership, team, and organization. Until next time, take care. We'll see you soon.